Welcome back to the Naked Wealth Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today I have Bre Johnson with me. She's a mother of 3 and she's an entrepreneur. She is the owner of and founder of Full Bloom Mama, which is a subscription-based box service to help women through motherhood. And she is recognized as filling in the gap in the marketplace for holistic support for mothers from preconception through that postpartum period. And as a mom of 3, you must have lots of experience there yourself, so I can see where your passion would come from. But thank you so much for joining us, Bre. And I always like to have people coming onto the podcast and sharing their story and sharing their business. Bre and I were chatting a bit before the call started about why we use money. And we don't have it just to look at our bank account and check the balance, but really to travel, to live your best life, to enjoy the time you're given to the fullest extent. And a lot of the guests I have on, especially including Bre, with what she's doing to support women is in each season of your life, you're going to have different challenges and wins and, really making the most and really being able, helping to enjoy and fully appreciate and experience the season you're in. So I appreciate you joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me. And I appreciate anyone like yourself that is out here trying to help educate in all capacities. That's definitely just one of my reasons why I wanted to start this business, was because I realized how under or misinformed so many women and families are in the birthing process. And specific to the US, there's just a way different look around the globe. And so it ignited a lot of my passions with understanding how the globe operates, but more importantly, like, what are we being taught or not taught at all when it comes to birth and even that period beyond. So thank you, because I just want to educate people so they can make their best informed decisions.
Yeah, it's great to have a pool of resources. And I think this podcast is becoming a place where people are like, hey, I wonder if there was anyone ever who talked about this or that, and a world of resources, because there is so much support out there. And there are so many people who really want to help and optimize different aspects of life. So, Bre, you mentioned that one of the reasons you started your business was because of a lack of education or understanding around certain topics in the surrounding birth, postpartum, and motherhood. What are some of those topics that you find that people are not fully educated on or need more information on?
Yeah, well, I think it's really easy. Again, I'm going to address everyone that sits stateside. This isn't the way it is across the globe, but when we look at how much education we ever get on our reproductive system in general, we look back to normally around 6th to 8th grade in the United States. We have a week of what they call health and wellness. Nowadays, they've included wellness, which is great, but most of us, that was the extent of our understanding of our body. And when it comes to females, I mean, I remember growing up specifically saying like, oh, if you even get in a hot tub with a boy, you might get pregnant. Just crazy, outlandish, like no sex in the tone of education. And then fast forward, 20 years when, okay, it's time to start thinking about starting a family. There's been a massive gap because we just don't talk about this. Or again, we focused on it for a week in middle school thinking we know something. But I realized, and again, having 3 children, they were all incredibly different stories, but I understood even the nuances and differences of how you choose to give birth. My first child was in the hospital with an OB. My second child was at home with a midwife. And my third child was due to, again, unforeseen complications at a midwifery center. And my midwife came in. So I kind of got the midwife, the hospital, the home birth. And even just that, I'm like, okay, I'm like in this line of work now that I've dedicated, but there's a crazy amount of options to make. And many, I think, including my closest friends that I've spoken with and been with for 30 plus years, nobody knows. Nobody knows actually what their options are. They very much kind of just feel like, well, you get a doctor, you go have a baby at the hospital, and like that's your course. But when we kind of peel back the onion layer, you realize that there's a lot more freedom in your choice to how you want your process to look. And or you might have a process and it might be completely turned upside down, but having that baseline of education, knowing all the facets and factors that come into play is a much different experience. And I think that's the biggest thing. Not everything is going to be right for everyone, but at least having options to understand what is going to, I'll use one of your words, Jen, like what's going to be optimal for you and your family is important to hopefully create, the outcome that you want in this big pivotal life moment.
Where do you recommend people start? I know you can say, oh, I'm going to go on a Google search, like options to give birth, or do I talk to my doctor? And maybe then you're getting one person's perspective may be different. Like, do you interview? There's also a matter of time, right? Especially say you're a mom who already has 3 kids and now you're expecting your 4th. You don't really have time to interview a doula and a midwife and a doctor. So how do you recommend people sift through the web of options and myths and truth and kind of get started in terms of making the right decision for themselves?
Yeah, well, I think this is decision fatigue era with everything because we have such a surplus of information. You could spend hours, days, weeks coming up with one answer, but I've always found that finding your North Star, your person, so to say, like finding your website, your blog, I think it's nice to have that offset. You kind of understand immediately by language that's used, philosophies that maybe you align with, finding one and sticking with it. And I'm an avid researcher. I love research, but that gets incredibly overwhelming. And then there's contradictory everything. So finding one source of truth, I think, is an important quality out there, which there's so many, again, but going just to even your OB and asking questions, you could take that same question to a midwife and they might have a completely different opinion. So I almost am under the notion to figure out what's your end state, like what's your end goal? What do you want this to look like? And then reverse engineer, as opposed to exploring thousands of opportunities or options. It's like, okay, if you know you want a natural birth and less invasive, that would usually indicate you would go more of the midwife route. If you're like, nope, I know that I don't want to feel pain, I can't do this, I'm afraid, anything, and you kind of immediately like, I want an epidural, I want to be in a hospital, that's great for you too. But whatever decision you make for that end state, then I think you go find the resource that can complement you in that journey, because then there's another slew of questions along the way after you've even made up your mind and kind of what that end goal looks like.
A lot to unpack for sure. I like that thought of what's your goal. I think it's a good starting point because that's something you know, and then you can back into it. So you mentioned you're also helping educate. What's in the subscription box? Like, is it things that help people educate, or is there like a component that's some sort of an educational component alongside the subscription box? Yeah. How's that work?
Yeah. Well, I have a grandiose vision that I too would love to form this incredible community that is open to being educated from different perspectives. And again, for me, this platform isn't like, well, this is the only way. More importantly is, hey, these are all of the ways. What's the right way for you? And so right now, the subscription boxes, as you mentioned earlier, start and meet a woman where they are in their journey. I have friends that are just starting their journey now, and they're in that preconception phase. So products and information packed in the box for that. But then following first trimester, second trimester, third trimester, and then what a lot of the globe calls the fourth trimester. In the US, more than likely, we refer to it as just the postpartum period. All of those boxes have products, and then those products come with an educational component to them. So these boxes are a lot more focused on natural, holistic health. And it's like, well, why would I take these two herbs? And in the box, it explains these are why these herbs are in this tincture or this essence that you're taking or this tea that's been formulated. So there's an aspect of education on the products themselves. And then at large with Full Bloom Mama, thanks to social media, Instagram, I too am trying to highlight practitioners that have dedicated their life's work to this space to talk about topics and taboo, especially like yesterday was pelvic floor. And, that's just a great example that, again, we here in the Western half of the world, that is not a part of our care. But when we look at the rest of the globe, 80% of the rest of the globe, pelvic floor therapy is a part of your postpartum care. Like you're actually looking at the health. And so, but again, how many times do we talk about the pelvic floor? Unless you're in that line of work, it's probably very nil to none. And so my goal too is just even through social media, I want to bring and expose incredible people that are very well versed in those topics that pertain to pregnancy, birth, or beyond to help educate women and their families of like, okay, this is a new thing that I should explore if that is interesting to them. So the long answer, Jen, products are backed with education in the boxes themselves. And then beyond that is trying to create a large community of amazing people that want to educate and just help people make informed decisions.
Yeah, you're adding a lot of value outside even the subscription, through the access just on social media. So I think that's great. I know when I had my pregnancies, I had some support prior to conception as I used fertility treatment. So obviously I had a lot of involvement there. And then when you become pregnant, you're active with your medical team. But to your kind of conversation about that fourth trimester, other than your potential postpartum checkup, there's really not a lot going on there. And a lot of the focus then shifts to the child. Can you describe when does that fourth trimester, like how long is it? Like how do you define it? Like what's the definition of the fourth trimester? Because that might be a new term to some listening. And even myself, like I have a friend right now who has a 9-month-old. And like, are you still in your fourth trimester or is that over now? Like when's that period? And what are some of the other challenges or things people are dealing with in the fourth trimester that really do warrant conversation and support that's really been neglected?
Yeah, well, great questions. Again, that term is thrown out there in different capacities. I keep referencing the globe. I was a cultural anthropologist in school, so I've always been fascinated with what is the rest of the earth like. The U.S. is a powerhouse, don't get me wrong, but what is the rest of the globe doing and operating in these ways? So I've always been interested there. When you look at birth, there are so many similarities across multiple cultures that all have the same foundational pillars. And all of them do recognize the fourth trimester even as important, if not more important, than all the trimesters you have birth. And the reason being, too, is that this is just a huge transformational change. And if we take the US, and I'm putting this lightly, but the go-to spirit of, okay, you just had your baby, we're giving accolades to people who are out at Target days later and wanting to return to work with no time or are forced to return to work. Some would love to have extra time. And unfortunately, we also here don't recognize that this period is so crucial. But a lot of cultures around the world look at the fourth trimester as the first 40 days after you've given birth. So everyone says that this is a very sacred window that actually can reset almost your health and longevity based on how you treat yourself in those first 40 days. That has so many indicators for your future, like 20, 30 years to come. And I am this is the best way I describe myself. I'm a woo-woo meets science. I love so many of these like natural, holistic, functional healing modalities. If there's data that backs them, that's like, woo, my win. That a lot of this stuff can sound like crazy and out there, but now there's enough research showing that there's a reason why the rest of the globe still is doing these things, because it's tried, true, and tested. And so some of those issues post baby is, again, just the sheer mental capacity that you called it out, Jen. Everyone goes immediately towards baby. It's like baby out of womb. We take care of baby, 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 everything. However, mom has just gone through one of the most transformational events in their life. How are we not giving, loving? Why do we say it takes a village? Well, it takes a village because you need people to care for your baby. You also need people to care for mom. And so, again, looking at some of these cultures around the world, they all rally. And by they, friends, aunts, moms, you name it, rally to care for the mom. It is actually not for the baby. They are there to provide food and nourishment and rest and help around the house. And so that's a very common thing. But some of those pillars are nutrition, number one, because again, you have to think about what you just endured. People say it's like running multiple marathons. Your organs have literally shifted. They've grown. They've moved. Internally, so much has happened to you. You have to come back down and get to a place where you were before you gave birth. That's a big process. When someone has call it out, a knee surgery, we're like, ooh, ice, elevate, rest, let me help you, whatever, because you physically see something on the outside. Internally, birth is so much more traumatic, and yet we look at it like, okay, carry on, back to your day job. And so nutrition is so massive. And again, a lot of cultures think that high fat, warming, grounding foods is what mom needs. None of this let's have a salad and a raw juice because, quote unquote, I need to get back to pre-pregnancy weight. That is so scoffed at. Again, looking at the global lens, no, you need a lot of great, amazing, healthy fats, and you need to be nurtured. So you want warm, soupy substance things. So nutrition's one, then just mind, mentality, well-being. There's so much work that shows it's a part of protocol across the globe that meditation, journaling, prayer, time to just breathe is a huge pillar for so many, which again, you're like, well, I have a newborn. They always say sleep when newborn sleeps. Well, guess what? So many are like, I got to clean the house. I got to get ready, get that. But it could take 3 minutes for you to do some intentional breath work and then watch where your mentality goes. It's vastly different. And then I could go on. There's also this form of movement that has to take place, but in a very methodical, gentle way. People that just get right back at whatever their exercise regime was a week after giving birth is, a big no-go. I'm talking movement again, a lot of people think that just breath work, working on diaphragmatic breathing, 360 breathing, getting your muscles, organs to operate pre-baby is such a big deal. That is considered movement. Is as silly or not as it sounds, breathing could be your first set of weeks. It's all about a slow flow back into who you were before while also understanding you've changed immensely. So a lot of this is tied to postpartum depression. Many cultures and research have shown if you are nourished, if you have some kind of mental well-being, spiritual practice, and you have these light shades of movement, the percentages drop for postpartum depression is astounding. But again, it's like it seems so simple, but when we live in this incredibly paced world that's like, get back to normal, you're done, focus baby, let's go, nothing happened. It is quite alarming to watch how many people's just mental well-beings really disintegrate because it was such a big process that's not being recognized. But the fourth trimester is incredibly sacred. It is incredibly crucial to be and pay attention to. And I think there's incredible resources out there that have what that protocol looks like. And a lot of our products are all supportive of hopefully creating that really safe, amazing place to be in after you've given birth.
I think I mean, especially when you're a second or third or fourth time or beyond mom, it can often be, like, baby comes out and straight to like running someone the sports and activities, but having that village to help you out with that so you can have that time, because it's true, it is such a huge shift in the body, and you really just often feel like, you're like, all right, well, I'm just going to bounce back into what I was doing 3 days ago. And yeah, it's a big, big change. And I appreciate your thoughts around that. And I think it's important and something, hugely overlooked, hugely. So where can people find you, Bre, in terms of on social media, or if they're interested in your subscription box?
Yes. Well, of course, our website, up and running, fullbloommama.com. And Instagram, we're fullbloom.mama. We're on Pinterest, just launching an Etsy actually this week. And there is a Facebook group as well, Full Bloom Mama. And I am very big on connecting, again, practitioners that are incredible in this space specifically, because I've had the honor and privilege to talk with so many and connect. I want to be a connector too. Maybe we're not right for you, but maybe you're dealing with something else. And we are creating this established, amazing community that is all for women's health and wanting to just see successful, empowered women and families feeling like they've taken some of their own just rights into hand, and while also being educated in a safe way of what's going to be best for them.
And what is your favorite book?
Great question. I have for like 20 years only read betterment books, like self-help, business growth, blah, blah, blah. I took a goal this year to read for fun. And that's wild, I know, but I will tell you, now I understand why people like reading. It's so much fun when you're not trying to like consume content to figure out how you're going to grow in some way. So I'm reading this book right now. Because it's right here, I guess, for those that are not watching, called The Midnight Library. And it is such a fantastic book on life. And it is like, I don't know, I can't actually set the book down. People have always talked about this for all these years. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. The Midnight Library.
And who's the author?
Matt Haig. And it is a journey of a woman who dies, or we think she dies, but you get an opportunity to go back and relive all of your life if you've made one different decision. So what would your life look like if you had chosen one different thing? So fascinating, and it's a great ponder of just like life, and this is our life that we get to live right now, and how are we making our best choices for what we've been given.
Those sliding door moments.
Exactly.
Yes. Oh, I love that. And that's like, you just tied in your book with your whole mission there, which I don't think you intentionally did, but I think that's important. And if it's those moments and it's the choices of listening to a podcast or reading something for self-help or reading for fun, like to make those moments really count the most, or signing up for a subscription box to give you a little more information, or follow somebody new on social media, just to, that 1%. There's a lot that can change with a 1% change. So I really appreciate your time, Bre, and I hope everybody really enjoyed this as much as I did. And thanks again.
Thank you so much, Jenn. Appreciate you.
Securities and advisory services are offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member of FINRA, SIPC.